Okay, this evening we have a Anagārika Ordination, and we'll just wait a couple more minutes before we begin. We'll wait for everyone to come back. Might still be a couple of people out. All right, we can begin. I'll call Andrew up. We can start with the chanting.
Sambado garawa sorajopato abhokaso pavaja naidang sukarang agarang ajawasata ekanta paripunang ekanta parisudang Sankalikitang brahmacharyang charitung Yang nunahang ke samasung oharetwa Kasayani watani acha detoa Agara sama nagaryang pabajayang. The household life is cramped and dusty. The homeless life is free as air. It is not easy living the household life, to live the fully perfected holy life, purified and polished like a conch shell. Suppose I were to shave off my hair and beard, don the robes of a Buddhist monastic, and go forth from the household life into homelessness.
All right, so you can go and put these on. That phrase that Andrew just recited actually comes from the suttas. And so since time immemorial, people have felt that there is a different way to live, and that the duties of the normal secular life are just it's a struggle, a never-ending struggle, that we start to think there must be another way. So that phrase is taken straight from the suttas, and then everybody here from the Anagārikas on up has recited that same phrase, as this is the first step in monastic training. So I always find this very moving, very inspiring, hearing people recite that phrase and stating that intention, wanting to take that step. So Andrew's now putting his whites on, and what's going to happen next is he'll come back and formally request 3 refuges and the 8 precepts. So of course everybody here keeps the 8 precepts that's normally kept in the monastery, but this is more of a commitment in terms of he's going to be staying in the monastery, not leaving, and so it's stating more of a long-term commitment to the 8 precepts, to the renunciate lifestyle. And, just recognizing the efficacious nature of living in such a way. And so this taking of the refuges and precepts during the Anagārika ceremony has a different quality to it than say when people take it on the lunar observance day. And then also putting on the whites, putting on this particular uniform, it's a constant reminder that one's in a different form of training. And there is a sort of uniform that all of you, the lay people, can be wearing as well, that they wear in Thailand, like a white top and then black slacks. And that can also act as a reminder. But then when we're with the Anagārika, there's no choice. They have their whites, that's what they're wearing. And except during the work period, if they're doing some sort of work where their whites might get soiled, then they can put on the regular lay clothes again. So it's kind of 1 foot in the lay life, 1 foot in the monastic life. That was fast. Ready for the Anagārika training.
Ahang bante tisarnena saha atta silani yachami dutiyampi ahang bante tisarnena saha atta silani yachami tatiyampi ahang bante tisarnena saha Atta silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisaranakammanang nititaṃ.
Amabante.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Anatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adina dana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Abrahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Brahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Sura meraya macha pamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
Nacha gita vadita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Nacha gita vadita visukadasana malaganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
Ujjasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Ujjasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
Imani yatta sikkhapadani samadhiyami.
Imani yatta sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imani yatta sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imani atta sikaparani samadhiyami.
Imani yata sikapadani silena sugating yanti silena boga sampada silena nibuting yanti tasama silang wisota ye.
Sadhu Bhante.
Okay, you can sit comfortably. You've taken on the whites, the Anagārika training, so welcome to the homeless life. This is, Anagārika just means homeless one. So we're not homeless in the sense that we normally think of homelessness. We have these great facilities here and we live in small huts in the forest, but technically we're homeless. And so having taken on the whites, then there'll be various practical changes to your life now at this point. You'll be eating with the Sangha, you'll have a bowl, you have a training robe that we call pavillon, be deepening your commitment to the community, making use of the Monk's Utility Building up in the forest. So that taking this step, there'll be a number of changes. You get a locker, and in the monk's bowl washing area. So refuges and precepts. The three refuges, you've stated them 3 times, so it's making it very clear that, and we call this like a change of refuge, trying to make it very clear that we're taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And the mind is always taking refuge in something. So whether it's some form of sensuality or refuge in having the right views and opinions or whatever. So making the refuge very clear that what I'm going to rely on from this point forward is Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Externally, the Buddha being the man who lived over 2,500 years ago, who was the Prince Siddhartha Gautama, who went forth from the household life with that same reflection, thinking the household life is cramped and dusty and so on, and went forth and explored a different way of being that eventually led him to liberation from all suffering. So the historical Buddha, that's the external Buddha refuge. Then you have the Dhamma, the teachings, the 45 years of teachings given by the Buddha that we can rely on, and then the Sangha, which is the followers of the Buddha who are practicing well. And the Sangha doesn't mean the ordained or the monastic Sangha, but it means anybody who has gained insight into, that's the Savaka Sangha. So when we do the chanting, Savaka Sangho, that's not referring to ordained Sangha, but it's referring to anybody who's attained insight, what we call the heart ordination. So that's, but then putting on this uniform, that's stating that intention to eventually want to take that type of ordination. And then internally, the Buddha is the awareness, the knowing, the puru in Thai, the knower. And so the purified, completely pure and unsullied and unconditioned aspect of knowing. And then the Dhamma is the truth of the way things are. That's the internal aspect of the Dhamma. And so the Buddha, the knowing, knows the objects of knowing, i.e. the way things are in reality, they're just so in the moment. And then Sangha, the internal aspect of Sangha, is virtue. So internally you can rely on knowing the truth of the way things are and virtue, virtuous behavior. So those are all refuges. A refuge is something that's a place of safety. It's something you can always rely on. It's something that'll never betray you or never disappoint you. Those are true refuges that can always be relied on. So it's recognizing those refuge, taking those refuges. But then the Kruba Ajahns in Thailand like to say, yeah, but it's not yet, we're not yet truly taking refuge in that way, even though we have stated it 3 times. really in the heart it's still kilesa saranang gacchami. So, but then we're going to try to move ourselves away from that as much as we can. So then the precepts, taking them on in more of a formal way, and these 8 precepts are very, very special, and they seem ordinary on the surface, but they're very powerful. And so just something like stating the precept to refrain from taking life, it just comes up in practical ways. You might have times where you're practicing in the forest and a mosquito lands on you. So rather than, we might have the impulse to slap the mosquito, we stop ourselves, just brush it away. Or we may even want to cultivate dana parami and have it offer some blood to it. So just in little ways like that, these precepts are going to come up. Obviously, we know that not killing on a coarser level, we're not going to engage in that, hopefully, although it is expected that states of anger and rage will come up in the course of the training, but we're urged to just look at it rather than act on it. So that precept does protect us in many, many ways. The second precept of refraining from taking that which is not given. So as an Anagārika, you can still use money. You still got 1 foot in the lay life, 1 foot in the monastery, but you will still be relying on alms food in a sense, and offerings that come to the monastery. You won't have to go and buy your own food or anything like that. You will be relying on, at least partly relying on the monastery for your life. But then just developing that sense of integrity with knowing about that there is this ownership, people have ownership of their possessions, and then having a lot of respect for other people's possessions and just having that sense of integrity. The third precept is really the defining feature of the holy life. That's the brahmacharya. So the third precept in the 5 precepts, so like the third precept for lay people is not engaging in sexual misconduct, which means honesty in relationships, not cheating on your partner, and so on. But for you, for the Anagārika, it's complete celibacy. So these sexual energies are normal for human beings, and they will come up, and so it's important to learn how to reflect on it and learn how to watch these things and not give in to them, not be a slave to them. And it tends to, I guess a pro tip is it tends to come in waves. So to not, if it seems very strong, then to not be overwhelmed by it, and it will ebb and flow. It will go away over time, but it just takes some time. And then with the so with that precept, it's living in a completely different way where we don't give in to these types of energies. And then the fourth precept, refraining from lying. I actually prefer the our old chanting book had the translation musawada, refrain from false and harmful speech. So that highlights the fourfold speech. Of course, not lying is the most important. So just having a sense of honesty in your speech and your actions, and then there's also refraining from harsh speech, refraining from divisive speech, refraining from idle chatter. And idle chatter is actually, this is probably a better translation, is useless speech. So speech that just has no point, it's just useless. It's not really. So yeah, say if you're talking to somebody, but it's in the way of, say, being there for them because they're having a rough time or whatever, that's not really idle chatter. That speech has some sort of use to it. But if it's just speech that's completely useless and we're talking mindlessly, not really knowing even what we're saying, so cultivating more mindfulness with our speech, refraining from intoxicants. This one is, it's one of the few monks' precepts where it can be broken unintentionally. So if I drink alcohol, even accidentally, I still have to confess that as a monk. And so just to be very, very careful around what kind of substances we're putting in our body, how they affect us, and then just keeping a big distance from any alcohol or drugs. And for people who may have engaged in that imbibing or consuming those types of substances before, then there might be a period of the craving might come up from time to time. But then again, just like the third precept, just to watch it and know that it comes in waves and it will fade over time. The sixth precept, this is one of the main renunciate precepts, is the eating at the right time, not at the wrong time. So that's defined as between dawn and midday. So in the Vinaya, dawn is when we can, say on a clear day, go outside and see the lines in our hands. So that's about 6:45 a.m. right now. And midday is just slightly afternoon, although we actually do the cutoff at noon. So like when you're eating in the hall, you say the meal is late one day or there's a late meal offering and we start eating late, then you would need to stop eating by noon. And if it's close, I would have the clock with me and say, okay, we have to stop eating now. So just having that clear cutoff. The seventh precept, refraining from entertainment, beautification, and adornment. This one's also very self-explanatory. Although there is, say, like there might be times to watch things like, say, documentaries, or you might hear music sometimes, or there may even be musical chanting that we listen to sometimes. Say if we go to the City of 10,000 Buddhas and they've got instruments going and they've got their chanting. So in my view, that doesn't break the precept. The precept is really, what it's pointing to is actually, it's both not seeking distraction like we used to, but also it's a public perception thing. We don't say we wouldn't go to a movie theater or we wouldn't go to a live show of some type. That's really what it's pointing to. And then beautification, I probably don't need to explain that one to you too much. You're not wearing jewelry or anything, but if you had earrings or nose rings, we'd have you take them out, and then not focusing on we stay clean. We don't want to be disgusting or smell bad, so we look after ourselves, but in a way that's very balanced and normal. Then the eighth precept is also a very interesting one, that it's around not using high or luxurious sleeping places. So the place where we sleep really, in a way, it kind of defines us. So however we like to live before, or we might know people who like to live more luxuriously, where they have a nice big bed with lots of blankets and pillows, and so the monastic way to live is just a simple mat on the floor or a low bed, and so the legs of the bed shouldn't be more than 8 finger breadths high. So just something that's very very simple, very easy to look after. Just 1 or 2 blankets. A lot of the monks have a practice of just using their robes as blankets, using this robe, the Sangati, as a pillow, and using the Jiwan as a blanket. That's a very, very good practice. Or just having 1 or 2 simple blankets. And some of the monks will sleep just on a yoga mat on the floor. In Thailand, used to be that, like the first time I went to Wat Pananachat, all you had was just one of these roll-out straw mats and on a hardwood floor, so it's quite hard. But then over time I found it was actually better. It's really actually good for the body. If the body can adjust to such a thing, it's actually very, very good. And then you don't sleep as heavily, and so it promotes mindfulness. And then you can just quickly you get up, you can quickly gather it up, and you can do your meditation quickly upon waking up. And it's also said that one can know a great Tudong monk if you go to their dwelling place and you can't find where they sleep. So it won't be like a really special area that they have for sleeping a lot. It'll be more like, when they're ready for sleep, they'll roll something out. I saw this with Longpa Liam going under his kuti. I couldn't figure out where he sleeps. I had to be his ubatak before I knew where he actually sleeps. So it's still a secret. He does sleep. There is a place he sleeps under there, but it's not that apparent. So these 8 precepts are very special, and you can feel inspired and uplifted when you keep them. They're very very sacred precepts. It's also been known to in the suttas. So the Anagārika, what we do is with wearing white is the white-robed lay followers of the Buddha they were devoted to practice and they were living as celibates. And so there were lay people who still worked and had a livelihood, but actually didn't, for whatever reason, didn't ordain. And there's even cases where these particular white-robed lay people give teachings to the monks. So there's famous characters in the suttas like Panchakanga or Gatikara the potter. They were actually non-returners. And so third stage of awakening, almost fully enlightened, and still lay people, but they wore white, so that's why we have the Anagārikas we're all white. And also the lay people who kept the 8 precepts on the lunar observance days in the time of the Buddha, they would wear all white and come to the monastery. So we're really, in the Theravada tradition, we try to keep everything back to the source as much as possible, so that's what we're doing also with the Anagārika ordination. So yeah, that's just some practical pointers and a few some information concerning the Anagārika ordination, and we can actually move on to the next part of the ceremony, which is formally taking dependence. So you can get back up on your haunches there.
Acharyo me bante hohi, ayasamato nisaya wachami. Acharyo me bante hohi, ayasamato nisaya wachami. Acharyo me bante hohi, ayasamato nisaya wachami.
O paikam,
Sadhu bante,
pati rupam,
sadhu bante,
pasadikena sampadehi,
sadhu bante. Ajatigedani tero, maihang baro, ahampi tera sabaro. Ajatigedani tero, maihang baro, ahampi tera sabaro. Ajatigedani tero, maihang baro, ahampi tera sabaro.
Sit comfortably again. So that was the formal taking of dependence. And also, by the way, backing up to the precepts, if any of those precepts gets broken, then the way to deal with it is just to let me know or one of the other senior monks know, and we'll just talk it over. So confession of offenses is just making it known, just letting somebody know, and so it is expected that they might get compromised from time to time through a lack of mindfulness, or just you might not be completely used to them yet, or through the kilesang saranangachami sense of the matter. Then just to let myself or any of the other senior monks know. And then the taking of dependence is, you've said, Acharyo me bante hohi ayasamato nisaya wachami, which just means, may the Venerable One be my teacher, may I take you as my teacher. So you're taking dependence on me, and I've agreed that that's a good thing, So you're also taking dependence on the community. So formally on me, but then you're relying on the community. The community's agreed to take you on for training. And then, so I say Opai Kang, which means something like good, and Pati Rupang, it will be of benefit. Pasadi Kena Sampadehi, I feel good about this. So, and then you said Ajatage Dani Tero, Mayang Baro, Ahampi Tera Sabaro, which is now from this day forward, the elder will be my burden, and I will be the burden of the elder. So we're consciously willing to take on the burden of just training you, pointing things out to you, showing you the ropes of the holy life, and then you'll also be helping to look after the community in various ways with the kitchen, the work, and so on, just as you've already been doing, just deepening that commitment more. And so with dependence, this is something, it's a ceremony that somebody like Lungpa Liam and the senior monks in our tradition, they take quite seriously, because it does create a karmic link. It's a teacher-disciple or a teacher and student link. And say when I was able to spend the Vasa, I spent my 7th Vasa at Wat Nong Papong in Thailand and was able to take dependence on Lungpa Liam, and I found that he actually took that very seriously, and then he was right there to point things out to me on a fairly regular basis. So it will be a kind of, at least at first, it's going to be a lot of information, but then it'll even out over time as you learn the ropes of the Anagārika training. And of course you have your other Anagārikas here who are going to help you out, and they can be pointing things out to you and letting you know how to do various things in the monastery, whether it's the bowl washing area or just learning how to use bleach, learning how to just keep those whites white and shiny. And so there are various practical things people will be pointing out to you. And then you also, taking dependence means you have invitation to ask me or the others, and you don't have to worry about putting us out or anything. We're happy to give advice if you have any doubts or whatever, then you can ask about them. So yeah, that's about all I have. I don't think there's much more to say. And so yeah, you can, if you just take your sitting cloth, there's a seat made ready for you there. And you can leave the blue mat here. There's a seat there for you. So I have 5 Anagārikas now. All right, so that's it. And Andrew is now Anagārika Andrew. You may know him as such. And today is the full moon observance day. Gonna have the vigil tonight be optional, just because I know there's a bit of a cold going around, and I myself am still a bit jet lagged and recovering from my travels. And but I think when I walked into the kitchen earlier, it looked like people were getting enthusiastic about staying up. So I won't stop you if you if you want to stay up. That's great. But yeah, not necessary. But if there's a critical mass of people at midnight, you're welcome to have midnight tea together. And then tomorrow is the day after the observance day. It's more of an open day, so we won't have morning puja. We'll just have morning chores at 6:30, breakfast at 7 as normal, meal at 10:45, and so on. And there would be no evening puja tomorrow. So yeah, I'll pass it on to our chanting master, our closing chant.
You can finish with the chant on page 33.
well. I